Welcome back, guys. We've got another wonderful week of skate class programming for you. This week, we're going to be joined by our friend Coach again, and we're going to dive a little deeper into some more advanced riding tricks, and we're going to talk specifically today about transition riding. That's right, we get to break out some ramps. We're getting off the flat ground, and we're going to see what Coach has in store for us. So, let's go ahead and see if our good friend Coach is ready to roll. Coach! 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 Woo. All right, bring it in. Bring it in. We got some stuff to do today. We are going to be talking about transition riding. That's right. Today we get to talk about riding on ramps, Coach's favorite. So today we're starting with just the basics. We want to get you guys rolling safely. So we're going to be talking about pump to fakie. We're going to take those kick turns we learned previously. We're going to bring them on the ramp and do kick turns on transition. And then to wrap the day up, Coach is going to show you how he rocks to fakie. And if you're good, maybe we'll talk about rock and rolls. So before we get started, go ahead and stretch out. One of the most important things of any good skate session is getting ready and being limber. So we're going to give you a couple minutes, stretch it out. I'll meet you back here in a second. I want to see you reaching for the stretch. No talking, stretching. Yeah, I'm talking to you. Touch the floor, reach for it. All right, a couple more minutes. All right, good warm up. So, as I mentioned, we're going to talk about pump to fakie first. That's when we ride up a ramp using our knees to push, there's the pump, and we're coming back down backwards, that's the fakie. Couple things that you should know before trying your pump to fakie. Thing number one, it's a little scary. That's okay. We want to lean into that fear. Fear will keep us alive, but we want to stay relaxed. So, accept that we might fall and move on. Rule number two with pump to fakie, speed control. We don't want to be learning new tricks at breakneck speeds, but we also don't want to err on the other end of that spectrum. If we're moving too slow, we're more likely to get caught up in the transition from ground to ramp. So find a nice moderate speed that's going to carry you up the ramp and back down. But again, starting out, don't go too high. It's going to be a little scarier. Rule number three. We're going to bend our knees. As we approach the ramp, we want our feet in ready position, and we're going to bend our knees accordingly to absorb the transition from flat ground onto the ramp. The last and most important rule, this applies to all of skateboarding, you're going to go wherever you're looking. So, as you approach the top of the ramp, or wherever you start to lose speed, before shifting your weight to come back down, I want to make sure you're turning your head. And I don't want to see us looking at our feet. If we look at the ground, it's where we're going to go. So, again, as you roll up the ramp and slow down to a stop, pivot that head and look out and beyond, and you're going to ride right back down that ramp safely. All right. Maybe you've done a pump to fakie. Maybe you've done a pump to fall. I don't know, but we're going to give you a couple tips to help troubleshoot if you're having trouble getting that pump to fakie figured out. Thing number one to think about. If you're approaching the pump to fakie and falling towards the ramp, what that means is you're not committing to coming back down fakie. Common problems around commitment involve your head. Make sure, again, turn that head and look where you want to go. And again, staying relaxed. The more we resist the ramp, the more we tend to fall into it. So consider this an opportunity to meditate. Clear your mind of all those concerns of falling. Stay relaxed and focus on the one thing you can control, turning your head. Couple other pointers for you as you're starting out. Again, we want those knees bent like they're springs. They're going to help absorb that ramp as you ride up. And as you may have noticed in those videos, I've exaggerated the use of my arms. Feel free to do the same. Keeping your arms out to the side is going to give you slightly better balance and more control reacting to the ramp. And as always, try and try again. If you can do 5 pump to fakies in a row, you've got that trick and you're ready to move on. So let's talk about our next trick. Kick turns. All right, now that we've tried pump to fakies, we're going to move things over to Alchemy's mini ramp to talk about kick turns. Before we start diving into kick turns, however, we do want to get comfortable with the ramp. So what I recommend is employ that new pump to fakie skill And go ahead and on whatever half pipe you're riding, just start to feel the rhythm of the ramp. We don't want to be working against it, we want to be working with it. So get a nice push, keep those knees bent, and start working back and forth, remembering to look where you want to go and get comfortable, because this is critical to working on our kick turns. Now that we got a feel for the ramp, we can start to look at those kick turns. Just as a reminder, or if you haven't watched our tutorial on kick turns, it's important to note that we're not leaning forward or back during these kick turns. We're simply initiating the turn by pointing our front shoulder, and we're allowing the board to come up on its back wheels by bending our front knee. Now, as we approach kick turning on the ramps, things are going to feel a little different than flat land, and that's okay. There's two main ways that you can start practicing your kick turns: a two-part turn and a one-part turn. We're going to start today off with the two-part turn, as that's how old coach learned this trick, and it seems to be working out fine for him. So get yourself ready on the ramp, front foot on those bolts, ready to push off. You're going to do a couple pumps back and forth to make sure you're comfortable with the rhythm of the ramp and your feet are in the right place. As you approach that wall, I want to see you early, before you're on the ramp, turning that front shoulder, and we're going to try to kick turn approximately 90 degrees. If we can get that kick turn perfectly horizontal on the ramp, we're going to have a rest moment there where we can recollect ourselves and do a second kick turn the other 90 degrees back down the ramp. Kick turns can be difficult and intimidating, so we're going to troubleshoot some of the common problems. Often our old friend commitment is going to rear its ugly head, and that's going to get in the way of you landing this trick. So as you're approaching the ramp, remember, fully commit that shoulder, twisting in the middle, and it's going to help give you the power to make that turn. Secondly, you want to make sure you're getting that first kick turn a full 90 degrees. Underturning is going to cause us to want to roll back fakie. Overturning is not going to give us that rest period for our second kick turn. So again, commit to half of your turn, the other half of your turn. Stay patient, work through it. If you've mastered your two-part kick turn or decided to just skip over it entirely, good news. We're going to talk about the single pivot kick turn now. Very similar to the two-step turn, we want to preload our front shoulder, committing it in the direction we wish to turn, bending our front knee, but instead of the two-stepper, we're going to want to put a little extra oomph in that shoulder, and we want that rotation to go all the way around. Now, there's two different styles of learning this kick turn. One might be better for you, one might be better for me. I'm not here to judge. But the two different approaches we call straight lines or horseshoes. So, when you're approaching that ramp, consider, are you trying to make a big horseshoe turn, or are you going to go straight up, swing that shoulder, pivot right back down? The more comfortable you get with kick turns, the more you'll be able to pick and choose depending on the ramps you're riding. But for the sake of learning, go ahead and test one out. If it doesn't work, try the other one. Again, folks learn at incredibly different rates with incredibly different styles. Find one that suits you, and we're going to break down those one-part turns right now. All right, we're going to push off, pump to fakie once, make sure our feet are set. Coming back in, we're going to horseshoe around and finish the turn. Let's try that one more time. We're going to pump to fakie, looking where we want to go. Moving forward, pointing that shoulder, horseshoe, back around. All right, talking about the straight line kick turn, we're going to push off again, looking where we want to go, getting our feet set, and we're going straight at the ramp. Swing that shoulder all the way back down. Again, the more shoulder you throw, the easier that kick turn is going to be. All right, so maybe you find yourself trying those kick turns and you're thinking, wow, coach, thanks for nothing. I can't get it figured out. That's all right. It's misdirected anger. We're going to move on. Common troubleshooting problems with the kick turn are staying comfortable as we're on an inclined surface. It's common human nature to panic when we think we might die, but in the art of skateboarding, we want to learn to hush that little voice, stay relaxed, trust in the process, and just like you went up, gravity's going to bring you right back down. So stay cool when you're going up that ramp, and if you're focused on one thing, focus on that shoulder, because again, the further you twist in the middle, the more power that turn is going to have. Now you may find yourself asking, Coach, what about frontside turns? That's right, they're an option as well. We here at Alchemy have found that backside kick turns on the ramp are generally easier to commit to as you have a clearer field of vision for where you're turning, but frontside turns are just as important, if not more so. So, same approach, point that shoulder rather than backside, open it up frontside. Stay relaxed on the ramp, trust in the process, bend your front knee, let the board come around, and get that kick turn. Again, a 2-step might be easier for you to learn, a 1-step might be faster. It's totally up to you. Just make sure you're staying focused on where you're looking, and you're gonna get those front side kick turns. All right, front side turns, front foot on the bolts, push off. Turning that head, making sure our feet are where we want them, and as we approach, turn halfway, all the way. And again, reset. And if we want to do a 1-motion kick turn, really swing that and let the board come all the way back around. Just like the backside kick turns, we can choose a horseshoe or a straight line. The choice is yours. Work with what feels good. And remember to enjoy yourself. All right, as you're working your way through those pump to fakies and kick turns, we've got one more basic transition trick we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the rock to fakie, and its not so estranged relative, the rock and roll. If you're not familiar, a basic rock to fakie is on any sort of transition with a lip. Our front wheels are going to go over that coping, and then in the rock to fakie's case, we're going to transition back down backwards, or in the case of a rock and roll, we're going to stall and kick turn back so that we're riding forward. Common problems with the rock to fakie. Probably not surprised to hear me say it. Commitment's going to be the biggest one. No one wants to hang up on coping and drop themselves to flat. What happens is, as we approach the coping and we make it over, we have a couple seconds here to ponder life, our meaningfulness in the world, and whether or not we're going to get back up after a fall like this. All of those thoughts are going to distract you from what you want to be focused on, which is simply transitioning weight up off your nose to allow your wheels to lift up and come safely back into the ramp. Now, it's important to note, bringing those front wheels up is a lot less about putting pressure on your tail and a lot more about releasing pressure from your front foot, or what we call de-weighting. While your foot can maintain contact on the board, you want to remove as much weight as possible, so even if your wheels hit the coping, they're going to roll right over and let you come back down fakie. Rock to fakies can be fun. They can be terrifying. So we're also going to talk about the rock and roll. For those riders out there that feel very confident in their kick turns, this one might be for you. Much like the rock to fakie, as we approach the transition, we're going to de-weight a little on the front, allowing those wheels to bonk over the coping or even lift up. Once we're in our rock position, however, the most crucial thing for your rock and roll, you guessed it, shoulders. We're going to want to pivot our shoulders looking down the ramp, because where we're looking is where we're going to go. If you swing those shoulders all the way around, your feet are sure to follow as you come back in and ride that rock and roll out. Now that we've broken down the rock to fakie and the rock and roll, we're going to talk to you about some practical tips for learning them. We generally never recommend learning new tricks on ramps that you're not comfortable riding yet, so if you have access to some smaller quarter pipes with no coping, or even bank ramps, they are much preferred for getting the basic feeling of both the rock to fakie and the rock and roll. So if there's a park near you or you've built some small ramps, we recommend warming up on a bank. The feeling is going to be different because there's no coping, which allows you the ability to ride away from your trick even if you're not committing to de-weighting that front foot yet. Once you start to get more comfortable with a bank ramp, rock to fakie, go ahead and try it out on a small quarter pipe with coping. The thing you'll notice, of course, is that the coping protrudes from the ramp, and it's going to create a small bonk going both over and back into the ramp. So again, you're going to want to fine-tune that weight displacement and learn to be comfortable lifting that front foot a little bit. If you have a skate park near you that has quarter pipes with no coping, that's a great intermediate ability to practice between your bank and your coping quarter pipe, but not a lot of parks have noping quarter pipes. So again, start small, get comfortable. If you can do it 5 times in a row, that trick is yours, and feel free to move it on up to bigger ramps. It's also worth noting that the rock and roll is typically more difficult on a ramp with less transition. This is unfortunate because it means you're going to be trying these on steeper ramps. But the nature of the rock and roll, we want a steeper ramp. It's going to create more ability to really pivot and catch that back wheel while you're kick turning. Working on rock and rolls on banks is not necessarily advised, but if you're feeling spicy, go ahead and try it out. We here recommend a slightly steeper quarter pipe for your rock and rolls and a nice mellow ramp to get those rock to fakies. You may find yourself incredibly frustrated as you work on your rock to fakies and your rock and rolls, and that's all right. It is a very difficult trick to learn, so I'm going to break down one of our little secret methods to getting more comfortable unlocking that D-weight skill. It's what we call the double tap. So if you're having trouble committing, getting that front wheel over or back under your coping, this one's for you. You're going to start off on a mini ramp or a quarter pipe, being sure not to get too close to the coping. We want to build this skill lower in the ramp. And what I encourage you to do is try to D-weight twice, stomping the board, doing a double tap. The more comfortable and confident you feel getting that double tap, the more confident you're going to be getting those wheels over coping and committing to coming back in. Go ahead and try it out now. So pump. As you're approaching the double tap, bend that front knee. Try to get 2. If 2 is difficult, start with just 1. As that 1 gets comfortable, fire off 2. As the 2 gets comfortable, maybe you get 3. Again, keeping our balance, but getting comfortable, letting the wheels come off the ramp is going to be key to having confident rock to fakies. Well, let's talk about your new favorite trick, rock to fakies and rock and rolls. I'm sure you've got them down and you're probably wondering, what styly variations can I put into that trick? Lucky for you, Coach has a few of his favorites. So, when you're doing both your rock to fakie or your rock and roll, consider decking it out. That means instead of having the coping at the midpoint of your board, you're sending as much board as you can over the coping. We want your front wheels touching the deck, and we want our back wheels and trucks hugging that coping. Styly, but requires a lot of commitment, so make sure you're ready. Other variations of the rock to fakie or rock and roll include toe up. As you bring that board over the coping, try transferring the weight from the balls of your feet to your heel and point that toe like the sophisticated savant you are. Then, of course, there's Coach's favorite style variation, which is the rock shifty fakie or shifty rock and roll. Coach likes these because they're very rhythmic and fun. And to do a shifty during your rock, all you're going to do is swing your weight the opposite way that you're planning to turn, kicking the board out and bringing it all the way back around. So feel free to get styly, play with it, and know that there's dozens of variations of these tricks out there in the world, probably some that haven't even been invented yet. So get creative and let's see what kind of rock to fakies and rock and rolls you can do. All right. Well, hopefully you've got plenty of things to practice now that we've done our basic transition videos. And you know what? For being such a good group of folks, Coach is going to share with you one of his favorite transition tricks, the Bert Slide. For those of you who are unaware, this trick was named after a legendary surfer, Larry Bertlemann. And the trick itself consists of getting low to the ground, dropping your hand, and extending the board up over yourself. This trick can be done on flatland, on banks, or Coach's favorite, quarter pipes. So let's take a look now at some frontside and backside Berts, and then we'll break it down a little bit for you. So to start our Bert, we want to just get that rhythm of the ramp going. Front foot on the bolts, and we're going to pump, getting real comfortable. Now, as I approach the ramp, I'm going to get low, drop my hand, and extend my feet, trying to allow them to come back underneath me. That is the front side Bert. We can do the same thing backside. Common problems with the Bert Slide involve committing and in figuring out where and when to transfer your weight. So we're going to break it down. As you're riding towards the obstacle you want to Bert Slide on, you want to first get low to the ground. It's important to note this doesn't mean bending at your waist. No one likes watching this skater, and rarely does he land any tricks. So when we get low, I'm talking about bending our knees, keeping our back straight so that we have a low center of gravity and we can reach towards the ground. As you get closer to the ramp, you're going to want to plant your back hand firmly on the ground. And here's the important part. You have to do the work here. The board's not going to do the trick for you. So the way Coach thinks about it is we're doing a stationary push-up. We want to plant our hand, transfer our weight over it, and we want to push the board out behind us. But of course, with motion, it's going to go up. We're going to pause up there, and we're going to bring that board back under us, standing up gracefully and beautifully. Not only is this trick a crowd pleaser for the younger and older skateboarders, but it has a wonderful margin for error, which means you can fall dozens of times trying this trick with little to no injuries. Because to initiate the trick, we're starting so low to the ground, 9 times out of 10, your fall on a Bert Slide is going to be you moving about 3 inches onto the ground. So don't be afraid, don't hold back on those Bert Slides, start hucking them, and if you're enjoying them, try getting those back wheels over the coping. Well, hopefully some of these tricks and tips are going to come in handy for you. Coach knows he worked up a little bit of a sweat there on those Bert Slides. I'm hoping that these things are helpful and that you guys get to skating. So go on out there, stretch out before you skate as always. Have a good time. We're going to send it back to your teacher now. We'll see y'all next week. All right, thanks, Coach. We're going to check in a little bit later on timeliness, okay? Okay. Well, hopefully you guys had a wonderful lesson. Hopefully you learned some good skills that you can put into use. If you don't have access to quarter pipes, half pipes, or ramps, fret not. You can always work on your flat land. If you are going out and about, make sure that we're not overcrowding the parks right now. We are still trying to do everything as safely as we can. If the parks are blown out, give it some time, come back later. Make sure you can give yourself those social distancings as recommended by the CDC. But otherwise, get out there, don't forget to stretch, and have fun skating. We'll see you next week.